Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about health checks, what they are, and how we can make use of them. So in modern day microservice, it's a standard good practice to add something called an health endpoint. And the job of this health endpoint is to tell us if a microservice is both up and running and if it is also healthy to accept any inputs. Now imagine, let's say, if you have got 100 or 200 test cases for a microservice and the service itself is either not up or if it is not healthy, it does not make sense to keep running all the tests only to find out that all of them have failed. It would be very useful if you can first, let's say, find out if the service is up or not by just running one test case, and only if the service is up you run your remaining test cases. It will save you both time and efforts. It will also optimize your CI pipeline execution times. So let's just go ahead and implement first the health check test, and then we will see how we can implement it in our CI pipeline. So in this particular case, we see that RESTful Booker provides an health endpoint, not with the text health, but as an endpoint ping. So let's just go ahead and add this particular test into our Aqua project. So if I open this, let's create a new package. Let's call it as health, and it should not be inside booking or anything else. Like, it can be its own package like authentication. So let's call it as new package, and we will call it as health check. Everything is lowercase, which is standard for writing package names in Java. And then what we need to do is we need an API endpoint. So for example, if I just probably copy a booking API endpoint, let's open this. Let me zoom in a little bit, and let's say if I copy this delete booking endpoint, let's copy this, and I'm going to create a class called new Java class, and this would be health check API. And inside this health check API, I can just add a static method because it need not have to know anything about scopes and stuff. So actually this can be static, and this would be simply called as health check, right? And it would not accept any input, so I don't have to provide any input here. And in fact, from spec factory, it can get spec for guest, because we are just interested in a basic specification. Alt enter. So if I go inside here, you can see for guest we just get a basic specification, but just add head as its content type, add it as accept application JSON, and just providing the base URL. Log if validation fails, and the endpoint call, let me zoom in a little bit. Let's make it 20 points. If I do Windows 1, the endpoint is ping, and it's a get call, right? So get and ping. So if I do Windows 1, the endpoint is not delete but get. And for now, let me just mention it as, in fact, I can mention it as health check endpoint. Let's health check endpoint. I don't have to provide any ID here. Let's copy the config variable. So I'll put it as config. Now we can access the config. Let's add this configuration in our application config file. So auth endpoint, let's do a control D. Let's call it as health check endpoint. And we could see that the name of health check endpoint was ping, right? Let's cross check it. It was called ping, and that's it. It's a get call, and we expect the status code to be 200, right? So let's go back, zoom in a little bit, and in here spec log when get, then log if error, extract response. Okay, so this is the health check API, and let's write a quick test for this in our test class, right? So we'll create a new package, not called booking, but we'll have a new package called not Java class, a new package called health check, and in the health check we are going to create a new class. So let's say if I make a copy of this, copy, paste, and I will call it as health check, and it will not be test but it will be test. And let me remove all the stuff about setup and tear down. We don't need to provide all this information, so all this can be deleted. So I'm going to delete everything else from the test class, right? So let's remove this, assert that uh, RESTful Booker application is up and healthy, right? This is what we are going to check, and we will call our health check API, and we will call the method health check, right? And then the only thing that we want to assert is, in fact, we don't even need this fancy assert method. I could actually, in this case, just do an assert equals, and if I say alt enter, and all I want to assert is if the response status code response get status code, if this is 200 or not, right? So I can even delete this, and if this works fine, then we have a test case for health check, right? So let's see how it goes. Cool. So the actual response code was 201 and the expected is nothing, so let's change the expectation, and if I call it as 201, then this test should pass, right? Okay, so the test is green. What else? What else? So if I open it again, so we are able to add health check test, and now we should try to see if we could run this test as a first thing, before running any other test. So let's add a tag for this. So I will add an annotation called copy, paste, and I will call it as health check test, right? And the tag would be health check, and I'm going to mark our test as, instead of test, I'm going to mark it as health check. So what we can do now is, in the reusable workflow, we want to add one more stage. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let's make it 20 points. We have checkout, setup JDK, unlock secrets, and before we run all the tests, in our case we don't have too many tests, but in an actual project you might have hundreds of tests, and in that case having a stage called health check would be super useful. So we don't have to provide anything in the excluded groups. This could be the same thing, which is flaky failing, and in the included groups actually I can provide let's call it as health check, right? And test environment can be taken from the input, because again it depends on which environment the application is up or not. Triggered by is also fine. Run name can also be fine. So everything else is okay. The only thing is we are hard coding the group to be health check. And now if I, let's say, push this change, so if I go back, Windows 2, let's go to commits, let's refresh this. So we have health check API, health check annotation called test, and health check test. So application config, health check ping, reusable workflow. Okay, so everything looks okay. So let's say, let's first go to a branch. Let's create a branch, git branch, git checkout branch, add health check, git branch, and let's commit all these changes, add health check test, and commit this. We know that because of formatting issues, you might see some issues in Aqua. If that happens, I will commit this while choosing Visual Studio Code. So let's wait and watch. Yeah, we have some commit failures. So I will just open Visual Studio Code, and from here I will be able to now commit this formatted files. And if I commit all these changes, add health checks, commit. Okay, once it's committed, let's go and push these changes, and then we would test git push, and then we will test how everything is working. By the way, this video is becoming a little bit longer, but it's better to cover everything regarding health check in one video than to try to do it in multiple videos. So let me create a pull request, so in fact, let me edit the description, and let me say that this particular health check fixes 43 and 44. So fixes 43 and 44. And if I update comment, let's look at the files. Reusable workflow, health check test, health check API, application config, health check test. And now let's look into the actions tab. In the actions tab, we can see there's a command called trigger test on pull request. And if I click on this, let's go inside, and we can see now we have a step called health check, and which should run only one test run 1, and when this is successful, it basically run all the other tests, as we can see here. Oh, test run 0. This is weird. Let me see why it is 0. Okay, so the reason why it is giving 0 is I could see in the D groups we have marked something as smoke, but if I look into Windows 2, if I go into our test, there is nothing marked smoke anymore, right? And that's the reason. In fact, let me go to booking API test. Let me close everything, close all tabs. And if I go to, let's say, first booking test, at this moment, there are no tests which are marked as smoke, right? But let's say if I don't give any tag, then it should basically pick up all the tests. So I'm going to basically change this. So let me go ahead and make 2 changes. In the pull request, instead of running smoke, I'm going to run all the tests. So include everything. Let me first commit this. Trigger test, run everything, not just smoke. So I'll say run everything, commit. Windows 2, Windows 3, yep. And let me push the changes. Git push, and this should do a new run. So actions, add health check, not the format Java one, but this one. And this time I expect one health check test and all the other tests to be run. So let's wait and watch. Running health check. So this ran the one health check test, right, as you can see, and now it is going to run all the tests because we are given groups as nothing. So it is going to exclude nothing, basically include everything basically. It's a little bit weird, but that's how it works. So if I scroll down, we will see that we now have 7 tests which is run. Now imagine if this was not 7 but 200, and if the health check itself would have failed. Let's see how we can prevent running of these tests. So if I go to Windows 2 and in the health check, but actually if we go back to the application, the RESTful booker says a success code looks like 200 and not 201. So it's actually a bug that it is giving us 201. So if I change the expectation to 200, we will see uh, that once this stage fails, nothing else will run in the next stage. So if I now do Windows 3, let's change this, uh, change expected code to be 200. So let's commit this. And let's do a git push again. And if I go and now look into the actions tab, we're not interested in the format Java code, so let's wait for the PR1 to trigger. Yeah, now we have the PR1. So let's open it. Unlock secrets, health check. Cool. And as you see, once health check failed, it did not run the step 4 test with Maven, right? This is exactly what you want. Like imagine if there were 200 tests or 500 tests in this particular service. Just by running this one test, we saved all the time and effort for running the remaining test, right? So I think this explains, how health check works and how you can make use of health checks to basically have more efficient CI pipelines. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in another video. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.